Bethann Moran-Handlik, welcome to the Undraped Artist Podcast.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you for having me. It's really an honor to be here with you. I love the podcast. I'm already a fan.
Oh, good. Thank you so much. Well, I'm honored to have you on the show because when I discovered you, it wasn't that long ago, actually. I discovered you maybe 6 or 8 months ago and was so unbelievably impressed with your work. It's incredible. So,
Oh, thank you.
I can't wait to learn more about you, kind of figure out what makes you tick. So, but I want to learn
Okay.
about your history first. So tell me a little bit about where you came from. How did you end up getting into this field?
Yeah, I grew up in a small town, West Bend, Wisconsin, and I think there were two like really formative things that are like embedded in my memory as far as being an artist. And I think I was about 5 years old, and I kind of knew that I loved to draw. And I was in kindergarten, and we were given the assignment, the lined paper, and we were to make a capital letter D. And instead of writing out the letter D, I just drew what I thought was the most amazing dog. And Sister Leonard, who was shorter than I am and just a wonderful woman, but a little scary, she took the paper, she didn't say anything, and then she asked me later if she could keep it. And she gave me in return a little piece of purple licorice. And I was a kid with a sweet tooth, so that just made like a really big impression on me. And then in about second grade or third grade, I'm going to say, we took a field trip to the Museum of Wisconsin Art. And at that time, this art collection was in a home that didn't look too much different than any other home on a block. But you went into the museum and you'd go to like a balcony. There was a big dark room. It was, imagine like an indoor swimming pool, but really dark, velvet, black, just spotlights. And you'd enter at the top on this balcony and you'd look out over all of these works of art by Karl von Maur. A lot
Hmm.
of people don't know his work, but they are powerful paintings. And then you'd go down the steps on either side like a promenade, and you'd slowly walk down toward what was this massive painting of, it's called the flagellants, of these people who are striking their back on a procession through a medieval city. And it's just gloriously painted. Um, it's about 22 feet wide and I think about 13 high. So it's a massive
Okay. And you brought
multi-figure
this painting,
city.
right? You brought this painting
Yeah,
with you. All right, let's pull that up real quick.
sure.
So, let's see.
Yeah, so while you're doing that, I'll give
So
you the
this is the
lowdown.
one,
So
right?
yes, this is the one. And there's one picture, there's another picture, I think it's the second image in the row there of me standing in front. Yeah, that one. This
Yeah.
right
Oh
that,
my
yep,
gosh,
that
it's
second one. Click that. So
huge.
that's me in front of this painting. And so you were in this dark, dark room and you'd go down the steps and I'm in second grade and the kids were all in little groups, but this painting makes up the full wall of the end of this large room. So you entered the room at about the height of the top of the pillar there or the flag, and slowly moved down to the level of those figures. And as you
Wow.
walk toward this large painting, along the side of you there was a large portrait of the artist's mother, and she was looking down at you with this kind of chagrin. There was a portrait of his father at a work table. There were portraits or paintings of the Christ child with these illuminated angels and cherubic figures around. But this painting just compelled me, like I felt magnetized to it, like a fish just being reeled in very, very carefully and slowly. And I both wanted to go toward it and I was kind of horrified by it, really afraid of it. But then as I got there, because the museum was so small, you could stand like inches away from this painting. And my eye line was kind of right around the feet of the girl in the white robe.
No
The ground
kidding.
is now, I think of it like Bastien Lepage's taupey raw umber grounds. There are little leaves and flecks, and it just felt like dirt. Her feet, I felt like I could see her feet, and you, I almost felt the air coming from this painting, and I would be glued to it, just stuck in this painting. And I didn't know what it exactly it was, but I knew I loved it, and I was afraid of it. And so then after a time, my teacher called on me and was like, Bethann, come on, we're going up. And I didn't want to turn my back to it. So I started walking away from this painting, thinking the figures might somehow assert themselves on me, even though I knew they were, this other material. And then I walked by the other paintings, one of which was a young couple who had been newly married, and the geranium that they're sitting by is just like this very present flower. And then another one of it was a small painting of a Christmas tree, and the tree was on a little table, and it's just illuminated with magical Christmas lights. And it was such a beautiful note to leave on. And then you go up the steps and you turn back and look again at this painting.
Mm.
And I think that experience just seared painting into me in a way that, is kind of inexplicable, but I think it was already there. But that experience, and then going back to that museum because it was in my hometown, just, I don't know, it just made sense. So.
Is it still in your hometown?
Yes, and they've built a beautiful new museum of Wisconsin art. And if you are ever in Wisconsin, it is a destination collection, those Carl von Maur paintings. They're really extraordinary. Lori Winters is the current director of the museum, and she's just doing a great job bringing in a lot of programming and artists. And yeah, but those paintings, destination paintings.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
incredible. You have a painting like that at your disposal to study
it's so
from.
true. Yeah,
Unbelievable. So, how
yeah,
did you go from this third grader who
yeah.
is just in awe of this incredible work to actually getting your hands into oil paint?
It took a little while. My mom is just a really aesthetic person. She's very textural. She built a home life for us that was really beautiful. She honored small beauty in our life. And she was a hardworking person, a teacher. She came from a big family in South Dakota, and then was a stay-at-home mom and really provided like meals and just all kinds of wonderful things for us. Really loving home. And my dad, as much as he was an orthodontist, but I would say as much as he was an orthodontist, he was a sculptor, an engineer, a tinkerer, an inventor. He has a couple of patents, and he was always doing physical things with his hands. And so his name, Hanslick, it's so appropriate
Yeah,
because it has a
yeah,
hand, right in
yeah.
it. So they provided a really fertile kind of ground for creativity. And then I just kept begging. I knew that the Carl von Maur painting was made of oil paint. I didn't know what that was, but from second grade on, I was like, can I have some oil paint? Can I have some oil paint? And
Wow.
finally, my Uncle Tony was a painter, my dad's brother, really good painter, oil painter, but also watercolor painter. And I think he finally, at the age of 13, he said, "Yeah, this is a good age. Get her some oil paint. It's going to work out." And so I included that little painting it's the only painting I have, but it's the very first one that I did with my oil painting set of
Is
this little girl. I
Oh,
copied it
yeah.
out of a National Geographic, just a goofy little painting. And I didn't know how to paint a figure, had no training, but I just kept looking at that picture and trying to get like I wanted the feeling of the coat, like the Carl von Maur gave me that feeling. So just a little painting, but my
You did
parents
this at
still have that one.
13?
Yep,
That's
yep.
quite impressive for 13.
Yeah, I was patient. I love the natural world. I was drawing things from National Geographic, little portraits and things, but this was the first painting. The next one I did after this was a full-on palette knife painting of a bouquet of flowers. And I don't have a picture of that one. I don't know where it is, but I know I moved from the photographs to trying to get this kind of impasto. Um,
How did you even
and then
think to
I
do that at that age? I mean, that seems so
well,
sophisticated.
I don't know. I really think, Jeff, I think young people are their minds and their creativity. It's so much more than we give it like credit for. We think about these young people as being categorical, like they're going to do this, they're going to do that. But if you really watch an uninhibited 10, 12, 13-year-old, they are so innovative in the way that
Hmm.
they engage in the world. And I think a lot of our arts education, even our just general education, it stifles that. So my deepest hunch is that it was the material of oil paint that led me to move from the photographic reference to the perceptual painting. I think the oil paint itself, and um, I don't know if you want to talk about oil paint, but I'm a material painter. Like I am interested in the oil paint.
Hmm.
And I think that for me, it literally is oil that captivates and drives a lot of my practice. And I think, the brain, our brains are 60% oil, 60%.
I didn't know
And
that.
then, yeah. And then what the other thing about our chemical makeup of our brain is the oil that's in there, the fat that's in our brain is so close to the omega-3s that are produced by flax seed. And
Hmm.
flaxseed gives us linseed oil. It's the flax plant which gives us linen. And that oil is ground into, our medium, our paint. And so I just think there's so much harmony there between the substance of the material of oil paint, why paintings are created, which is largely it's not for our physical body. It's for our mind, it's for our spirit, right? It's for our imagination. It feeds our emotional, intellectual, spiritual well-being. That's what paintings do. They don't serve our bodies, except when we're in the midst of making them, they serve our bodies somehow. But so we're making oil paintings with the substance that is so chemically close to our brain, for our intellect,
What a
spirit.
connection.
You know, it's like I just think there's something so powerful about that. So um I'm more aligned with like I included in just a couple images that I sent you before we began talking, a Joseph Beuys image of a chair with the triangle of fat. And yeah, that's that little guy. You might have to enlarge it. It might not be a great image, but Joseph Beuys, just in his radical, other-endedness, he's a very material painter, or no, artist, I'm going to say. And he really bought into like the artist as shaman, as someone who goes to a certain ends and experiences something, goes way out of the schema of what is normal. And by doing that, kind of takes something away and brings something back and reoffers it to everyone else who is afraid or uncertain about going there. And then the consumer, the audience, looks at it, and in some way, we understand, okay, he went there, we understand that, and now it can be part of our, path to joy, our acceptance of our humanity, whatever it is, elixir of our woe. And in this chair, he has sculpted a wedge of fat. And so I just think about oil as anointing. Oil anoints, oil heals, and oil nourishes.
Wow.
Jeff, is that a painting?
That is too cool. But
That's a
it's
painting.
I'm amazed by your intellect and your appreciation for this metaphor because particularly because all I can think about is how bad this chair must stink.
Yeah. Well,
And
yeah.
and also I've been watching The Walking Dead and I'm thinking they're smashing all these brains in and this could make a great painting medium.
Yeah. Yeah,
Sorry,
it has
different strokes for different folks there.
no, yeah, and it's for me, boys is not it's not the visual aesthetic of his work that I
Yeah.
align myself with, but it is the quality of the ritual, the nature of the it's conceptual, but also the material aspects of why he's doing this. And I feel a kinship to that fact, to that chair. What are we but that? I think there's something that touches me deeply about Boyce's work, even though my aesthetic habit is way far away from it. But I thought I'd throw it in there because
Yeah.
he's an interesting person and does really represent that shamanistic kind of approach to thinking about who is the artist. And I
Yeah.
think we need that. I think we need that person.
So you must have a real love, particularly for, maybe this is redundant to say, but the reason I'm saying it is because this is new to me, but it seems like you just have a real connection with oil paint and not so much with, it's not so much about art in general, but you're like really connected to oil paint specifically.
I think right now I really am. I mean, there's something about, and it is oil paint, but it's the materiality of the substance that I work with, whatever that happens to be. Like I really don't want to work with acrylic. I'm not interested in plastic. I
Yeah.
don't think anything that I can make with plastic will resonate the same as if I make it out of a material that has a resonance with my physicality, my relationship to nature, my relationship to science. Like, I just think making a painting that has some substantive quality that I can resonate with is important. Like, I actually prefer casein over gouache. And part of that isn't, it's not just the properties of the paint. There is an intellectual relationship, conceptual relationship with the material because casein is milk. And what do women do when they have babies? They lactate. I mean, my body has produced milk, which is a really weird thing to say, but at the same time, I marvel at that. I marvel at that my brain is made of this similar fat, chemical makeup of fat, as flaxseed that I paint with. I marvel at that. And I think on some level, there's some mystery inherent in that. And I love
Oh,
the mystery of what it is I am trying to arrive at. And I'm also like, okay, so I was kind of talking about the story of my arc. Do you want to, should I interrupt myself to go
yeah.
back to
Well,
that, Jeff? Or
I just want to say that this is amazing because, I've often said to my students that there's something beautiful about things like oil paint and charcoal and all these mediums that we use, that they come from the
yes,
earth and we can make these images that are so beautiful and represent reality and things
yeah.
of the earth. And you're taking it so much further and saying these mediums are not just of the earth, they are human mediums. They're coming from the body
Well,
indirectly.
and if
Yeah.
indirectly, yeah, I've not ever made
No,
casein
no, no.
from
I
my
know.
own milk.
Yeah. Of course
I
not.
have not done that. But I do really think that, you know, I just heard Yo-Yo Ma the other day was talking about his Beethoven three. It's a three-person quartet, or what is a three? Well, three
I
people
don't
are
know.
playing Beethoven.
I'm not a musician.
But what he said is that Beethoven is so relevant now because he touches on what is cathartic and what is um, not transformational, transcendent. What is cathartic and what is transcendent. And if we carry through the model that, well, like you're painting the human figure, right?
Hmm.
So in a sense, you're using oil to paint something that is oily, you know,
Yeah,
and
that's a
and
trip.
and to and like to have this cathartic and transcendent where one material morphs and generates another thing. We're making a new reality. We're making another entity. Um, there has to be some harmony. between that in order for those to be wholly unified, in my opinion, in my experience, and in my thinking. So
Wow, I
that's kind
love
of where I'm
this.
coming from.
So I just taught a workshop, and my process is very indirect. I use a lot of layers in order to, particularly with skin, in order to
Yes,
create the translucency that's in skin. And
yes.
I said in the workshop, and I've said this 1,000 times, that oil is the perfect medium for that, because
It,
you can't get that combination of opacity and translucency with any other
yeah,
medium. But what after hearing you talk now, I'm realizing it's so much more significant than that, because when we're painting skin with oil, it's almost as though, in a way, we're literally making skin by layering oil.
yeah.
Like, I
And
mean, maybe I'm
and
taking
I
it too
don't,
far, but it's like, I mean,
no,
the skin is translucent because of that organic nature.
and because of its oiliness. I
Yeah.
mean, our skin is the second largest organ on our body that holds that oil. And it does come to the surface. That oil comes to the surface. And someone who's written about oil painting, this might appeal to you in that same realm. His name is James Elkins, and he was a painter, but then a theoretical critic on painting. And he wrote about what's called the materia prima. And he's speaking about painting from this very alchemical kind of point of view. And he says the materia prima is nothing yet. That's our oil, right? It's nothing
Mm-hmm.
yet. But it has the potential, it is in potentia to become anything in the world. The gleam on a pearl, the little red in the corner of an eye, and so this materia prima, this substance which is nothing, has the potential to become everything, is kind of the way that I think about the oil paint itself, because in some ways it's becoming something new, but it is also behaving as itself, you know?
Yeah.
And the reason I thought of Elkins is because on the cover of his book, he has this beautiful Rembrandt portrait. And he gives one of the best descriptions of the nature of the skin of the Rembrandt portrait. It's kind of bally. The oil paint almost mimics like little skin tags. There are little greasy lines. It has a depth to it, a texture to it. And when you were saying, yeah, well, maybe we're taking this a little too far to think that the translucency of oil is exactly what allows you to do that indirect painting to create that translucency, maybe we're not taking it too
Mm-hmm.
far because, in a sense, you think of Rembrandt standing there. What do we all do as painters? We trade our life, Rembrandt standing there, traded his physical, active, living life to transmit and transform and transcend something into the painting that now when we look at the painting, we see some remnant of him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I think only medium to do that.
That's great. I love that. So let's go back though. Let's pick up where you left off on in your life.
Hmm.
So we got to the third
Yeah.
grade, and then no, we got to 13
Okay.
years old. You're 13 years old, you have your paint
Yes.
set and you do a couple
Yeah.
paintings. Where did your education go from there in painting?
Okay. I went to St. Norbert College undergrad. Had a very well-rounded education in philosophy, and um, they say philosophy and poetry are the two uncorruptibles. You can't make a dime off of those. But that gave me a place to think. And then there was an art program there. I graduated in graphic design. The person who taught painting, he wasn't a painter, he was a photographer. So
Hmm.
very little school. He introduced me to a lot of good concepts, really good people there, but I didn't really get quite the what I really wanted out of my undergraduate training in terms of painting. But then I graduated, I applied to a whole bunch of schools, got into really every place I applied, which was fabulous. But I ended up choosing University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee because they said, if you come here, you can teach. And I knew I didn't want to have any bills. And so I was 23. well, 23 once I graduated and started teaching at UWM drawing. And I really kind of reinvented it. It was all perceptual. It was so fun. I think in some ways I was maybe my best teacher at that point because I was so driven, so compelled to try to communicate how to go about doing this. And there was a clear rapport between the students and myself that they could feel how much I wanted to give this to them. And so, in a sense, we were all in it together, but I was ahead of them. And then I taught all through graduate school. And so, in graduate school, there were two primary people that I worked with, John Colt, who was a watercolor painter, and then Tom Utek, who this is one of his works. This is a large work. It's about 94 by 94. I believe this was just part of his show at Alexandra Gallery in New York. And so these two men were absolutely compelled by nature, and they expressed it in very different ways, and different ways than what I wanted to do and wanted to, kind of find a pathway toward. But they both expressed this kind of ecstatic view of nature, and I found myself gravitating toward them because the conversations were so really beautiful about the natural world. And so while in graduate school getting my MFA, there wasn't like a direct skill set handed on. It was more about a language and a path forward that said, if you love this, keep moving toward it. And so in graduate school, I really painted very abstractly. I painted with encaustic, raw beeswax. I painted with some tar. I painted with oil paint. Namely, I think, because honestly, I didn't have a skill set vocabulary to work out of.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, I have regret about that. I wish it could have been different. My path would have been another path if I had had that skill set. On the other hand, I'm where I'm at, and I'm a happy person. I love painting. I have conviction for how I think about painting, and those things that I did learn and kind of found my way toward, they really have never let me down. So
Hmm.
it's a kind of a crazy thing, but I do love where I'm at. So
So are you still teaching now?
I just stopped teaching after 32 years of teaching. I just stopped, and I'm painting full time again, and I just am really loving that. I found in myself that I really was a teacher. I
Mm-hmm.
got a lot of fulfillment out of teaching. I love the language in the studio. I love being in the studio with those young people. They gave me a lot. I love my relationships that I have with former students, and yeah, I really did enjoy it. I felt like because after I graduated and I was working so much from observation through all of my training, just kind of individually in a way, um, I felt like I was really giving them a skill set that they might not otherwise have had gotten. Maybe I was trying to give them what I wished that I had received in part,
Hmm.
but I was always coupling it with the, philosophical, conceptual, theoretical otherness of what painting also is. So,
Yeah. So let's talk about that painting from observation. So I want to go back to this little girl that you painted. Let's see here. It's such a great little painting. Um, but what you mentioned when we talked about this little girl, I guess you painted her at 13, correct?
yep,
Okay. Then you said at some point you put the magazines away and the photos away and you started working from direct observation. And from
yeah, it was literally the next painting I made. This was the very first one that I made because I had been drawing from National Geographic pictures,
hmm
and I got the oil set. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna paint this thing. So I just painted her, and then the very next painting was a small vase with a few flowers, and I painted it entirely with a palette knife. And
and
the
that was from direct
observational,
observation.
yep, yep.
So, and it
And then
appears like
that,
you still do that. I mean, I watch you on
oh
Instagram
yeah,
and you'll be out in the middle of the winter
yeah,
painting a plate in the snow. And it's
yep.
just unbelievably impressive, your dedication to direct observation.
Yeah, Jeff, I get so much from that. I'm so interested in that rapport between myself, my subject, and the what is being manifest in the painting. I'm at a place in my own work that yes, getting the huge thing out to the site is hard. Yes, it is occasionally really cold or really hot or there are insects or it's unpleasant. But my experience is that I have enough um, experience of completely losing language, um, of completely, I feel at times like I disappear into whatever it is. I don't know where exactly I go. I know that's the state of flow, but that can last for a long time. And being outside being in front of my subject, even with some portrait and figure work that I've done, I can get lost in the presence of whatever it is in front of me. And it takes a presence. It takes a presence of someone else for me to submit whatever my presence, I guess. I don't know. I'm trying to just think it out as I say it, but
Hmm.
um, I think that's part of it. I think that I have to be in the presence of something kind of palpable, and then I get lost in the work. And these paintings, some of them are quite large, and I always think like, why would someone collect my work? What is a collector? What's the interest there? And I always post those images now of me working outside in the landscape because the fact is that when I'm in the woods, some of the pollen, the air, the temperature, the painting itself goes through that same environmental condition that the subject I am painting is going through.
Hmm.
And and I think that there is something that happens in that, a poetic mystery that happens within that makes the painting different than if I were solely in a studio working from a photographic source. And that difference is that there's a contribution that comes from the elements that changes my pace, my thinking, my body, my temperature, and I see the subject changing in time. So that gets into the painting somehow. And a lot of times I think of those paintings as kind of like artifacts from nature. And I don't know if you bring a Christmas tree into your house every
I
year,
do. Yep.
but we do. And every year I'm blown away. I'm like, wow, there's a tree in our house.
Well, ours
And
is still up. It's February, what, 6th
yeah,
today? And ours is still up. And my wife decorated it
exactly.
as a Valentine's tree because we love it so much.
That's right. We've done that too. And a lot of times when I bring these paintings in from outside, I literally feel like I've brought the Christmas tree indoor. Because once I go inside, I really feel the shelter. I feel like I'm in shelter. And there's no other way. It's a really amazing feeling.
Yeah. So I worked from life exclusively for 14 years. So that's why I was just related to that feeling. Everything you're saying, I absolutely relate to. And then COVID hit, and as a figurative painter, I had to start using photography.
Oh yeah.
And I absolutely agree with you. But I want you to tell me about the viewer, though. I wonder do you feel like the viewer has a different experience or could have a different experience because of how you make your work, because you're working directly from observation?
Well, I do. I mean, I think that there is something transmitted through the materiality of the painting that does arouse a different effect in the audience. And that is not necessarily like exactly what they see on the surface of the painting or in the narrative of the painting, but it is because I'm in that specific condition, my decisions are incrementally tweaked. They are slightly adjusted. They
Mm-hmm.
are
Mm-hmm.
responsive to and sensitized to a nuance that I know is shifting, is flexible, is malleable, is is different than if I'm looking at something that is static and fixed, and I can take a different kind of time with, that I have a different rapport with. And I do have a different rapport with a photograph, or if I'm indoor painting a still life or a model, that's a different rapport. And so to that end, and I know that's nuanced, but to that end, I think I'm giving the audience something that they dearly need. And that is in part what they see, but it might also be part of the knowledge that they have that this thing, this artifact, was made on site in a space that they are compelled by and that they would like to be in, and that they have some memory generated from or an emotional response to. And when you tell them, I sat there, I was these are my gloves, and I sat in the cold a long time for you so that you could have this thing. And I made it the way I made it because of all of the conditions that I was subject to, that this painting that you will live with was subject to. This painting was cold. This painting was more greasy this day because it was hot outside. The paint was
Mm-hmm.
slippery. And on this day, the painting was stiff and sticky, and I had to put a little bit more medium in it to make it move. And then when I brought it inside, it was more tacky. When I tell them that, it does change the relationship to that thing
Yeah.
that is made. I don't
Oh
know.
man. I love this. I seriously, this is so great to hear you talk about this because it really hits home for me. You know, I had an experience
I
in
would,
Israel where I was up on, I can't remember exactly where it was in Israel, somewhere in the desert. And we're overlooking these sand dunes for miles and miles and miles. And then all of a sudden these camels come along with these Bedouin people, and the Bedouin
wow.
people, they didn't speak English or anything, but they were all dressed in traditional Bedouin costume, and they were trying to sell us these Bedouin like scarves and jewelry and beads and so on and so forth. And my guide, who was from there and was
Yeah.
Muslim, he said, "Don't buy any of that stuff." And I said, "Well, why?" He goes, "Because it's all Chinese made. They don't even dress like this except for tourists. They dress in
Oh,
Western clothes." He says they
yeah.
only own a camel in order to make you feel like you're in, speaking to a Bedouin. They're
Yeah.
normal people, right? And
Yeah.
he says that it's all Chinese jewelry, Chinese stuff. And I was like, it didn't matter to me at that point. It immediately lost interest. It didn't matter that the scarves and the beads and everything looked exactly like Bedouin
Yeah.
clothing and jewelry. It was now Chinese jewelry, and
Hmm.
because it was made in China. And
Yeah.
what I'm hearing you say is something similar to that. It's like I could paint a vase of flowers from a photo, but now it's made in China. Now it's made not from the flowers and the vase.
Right.
It's made from something else somewhere else, and it's almost an inauthentic, dishonest
And
interpretation in a way.
And it passes through you. It passes through
Right.
you, the artist, with a different set of conditions that are mediated. It's a mediated experience. It's
Right.
mediated by the photograph. It's controlled by that set of limitations. And that does not allow for as much incidence of, it's more fragile to be present in front of the thing because you have to live your life in relationship to that condition. Whether it's a model who might move or shift or whatever it is that they do, or a gust of wind or an animal that comes by, you're conditioned in that relationship, and that relationship changes palpably what happens, at least in my practice.
Oh, you're making me want to throw my camera away again. Oh.
No, don't do that. I do think think, Jeff, I seriously think that, okay, for me personally, I don't usually do any commission work that is from photographs. But I just did 4 large commissions, and I don't usually publish those because they're people's private spaces, and I feel like it's their thing. But this woman through Instagram commissioned me, and she just kept saying, "Please, I think you're the right person to do this." It was family property, and she really wanted me to make the painting, but I had to make it from a photograph. I was like, I don't think so. I don't think I can do this, whatever it was. And so finally, she told me her life story, some of her story, and I was like, okay, there's something here. I'm going to do it. So I did it recently, and she loved the painting. I actually really enjoyed the process. I felt like it was a really strong work. And what I did, Jeff, is probably exactly what you do, and what I hear so many plein air artists say, yeah, I make the study, or I've painted so often from the landscape that now I can do this. Those experiences of you being vulnerable in front of your model, you being aware of their shifting, their moving, of their intellect, their physical, their spiritual well-being, that leaves a residue. It's a residue of experience on you.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, can still be transmitted then when you do work from photographs. And after you work for photographs for a long, 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 long time, I think you lose some of that. It gets quieted down. And then I think you have to go back to the well and get the experience and then start again.
Well,
That's my
thank you
theory on
for
it.
that. Thank you for that, because I
Yeah.
spent a lot of
And
money on that camera and I don't want to throw it away.
your portraits are beautiful.
Well, most of
Your
them are done
port
from life, but yeah, thank you. I
The
appreciate that.
portraits are beautiful. And I was thinking about, like, when I was looking at your work, I'm really eager to see one of your paintings in person. I will look forward to that. But I was thinking and looking at your work, there are so many different access points to paintings. And one of them is the narrative, for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then another one for me is like the construct of the painting, the design of the painting. And then another one is the scale. Scale matters to me. Like, I think of scale as an entry point in, and the other is materiality. And in your paintings, because of the way that you use these really electric, amped up, high chroma light sources, there's something about the coloration of that feels like the mystery and the entry point into the painting. And I see your painting as like there's the figure that you are painting, and they have that light source upon them. Some of them feel oblivious to that source light, and others feel like they are knowledgeable of that source light. But I think of it as like there's some mystery involved in that speaks to like the I don't know, like the spiritual quality of the person. And mystery is such an incredible,
Mm.
almost medium. It's almost a medium, really. Yeah.
Man, I should hire you to write my artist statement. That was beautiful. I love the way you think. I mean, you have just this
Oh,
poetic, and you did study philosophy, correct? I mean,
I did a
you
little
did,
bit.
yeah. So you have this incredibly poetic, philosophical mind. It's beautiful.
Mm.
I love it. Okay, so let's go to your website. And as far as I understand it, on your website, you can look at these paintings and then see you working outside. So, oh my gosh, this is freaking amazing.
Yeah. If you
Amazing.
scroll up, Jeff, if you scroll all the way up on that one, keep going right there, that one. If you can, I don't know, I think you could probably enlarge this one, the bottom picture of me with the just kind of two-finger expand.
Oh, well, I can't on here. I can't do that
Oh,
on
you can't.
here.
Okay, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Unfortunately
So
not.
those
I
will, I
think your
guess
viewers can
we
probably get
probably
an
can't read them
idea.
that well.
There's your head right
Yeah.
there.
That's my
So
head.
that's a big painting. And you know what's really a trip is how the painting is camouflaged into the background.
Yeah.
But it's not one of those silly Instagram tricks where they do it for follows, but it's like it's
Yeah.
just so convincing of the feeling of the environment. It's great.
Yeah, thank you. I was moving the painting, and since I've had an Instagram these last couple of years, my husband comes out and occasionally will take my picture, and it's been really helpful for, capitalizing on an Instagram audience of collectors and other artists. So,
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about this process. Okay, so this is all the same painting. So you've got it here, you're clearly
mhm.
outside,
Yep,
and that is a beautiful land. This is Wisconsin?
yes,
Man, that's gorgeous. And then you're here in the studio on this picture. So
yep. I had
tell me about
just
what you're doing here. Is touch-ups or just displaying it?
No, I had just come home from painting. Up north is like 5 hours away. We have a little place up in the woods, and had just come home. You can see the baskets on the floor in the studio. I just put it on the easel to kind of let it dry and really just to look at it.
Okay.
And so I thought, hey, I'll take a picture of it. It kind of made sense with some of the other stuff going on there.
So tell me about when you do these, what I think are very complex paintings. Because I went painting with a guy once who said he never paints in the middle of the woods like this because the shapes are too complex, too busy. It won't make a
Yeah.
great painting. And I've mentioned this to other people I've podcasted with,
hmm
and they've had various answers. But what is your thinking on that? How do you manage all of this information? And what do you think it is about paintings like this that you tend to gravitate toward? Because you do a lot of paintings that have very complex, small shapes in them. So can you tell me about that a little bit? What your thinking is?
Yeah, I really love the painter Bastien Lepage, and his woodcutter painting was one that I saw at one at a young age in the Milwaukee Art Museum.
Mm-hmm.
And this painting in particular was kind of an homage painting in a sense to him. But yeah, that flora and fauna, the trees, the changing light, it takes a long time for me to be with that subject. There's painting over painting. It's just a matter of layering what I'm looking at. I know there's so many things that I can get quote unquote better at in terms of skill, but what I'm really leaning into these days more than anything is what is my nature? What is my nature as a painter? And my nature as a painter is revealed through little stacking of quite small marks and letting that accumulation become the illusion. And so that allows me a lot of freedom because while I do have some very large passages in the painting, inevitably the painting is woven together by all of those scumbles and veils and scraping back and rebuilding in fairly small incremental ways. And
Mm.
so I always tell like painters, especially painters who are younger, what is one of the most important things that they could do? I say, know your nature, follow your nature, and then take all those skills and build them toward and into your nature, because that's how you get authenticity. That's how you get to be relaxed and be a painter that has some, a voice that is truly your own.
So when you say your nature, you're referring to your own personal temperament, your own,
Your
yeah.
temperament, yes. And
Okay.
I think your character is involved in that, but your temperament, yeah, temperament, your nature, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so are you familiar with Kwang Ho's work?
Oh, I love it.
I thought you might. I mean, I don't, your
And I
work doesn't
loved your
look like his.
podcast with him.
Oh,
He
no.
and
Yeah, it was a
Adrian.
great
Woo,
one.
woo.
I know. Those two are
We're great.
great. You should come to the Porch Society this year. They're both going to be there and it's going to be a lot of
Oh, that,
fun. But
yeah.
let
I've
me,
always wanted to go to that, but I never have.
oh, you should. We would
Yeah.
love to see you there. But so this reminds me of Kwang Ho when I zoom in right here. And the way he would talk about this is that every tiny portion of a painting should be a little abstract painting. And it should
hmm
work on that level, that abstract level without knowing what it is. And I actually have a painting of his that he gave me. He's a really generous person, but of a little figure in the woods that almost looks like this when you zoom into yours, you know.
Oh,
But yeah, I feel like you guys
that's
are
high
kind of
praise.
kin spirits there.
That is high praise for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at a few more of your paintings here.
Okay.
Um, uh, so this one, my wife just started beekeeping,
Oh
and
yeah.
I thought when I saw this, I was really amazed because I thought, yeah, I could just go out in my front yard because she's got this cute garden in the front yard and these
Hmm.
bees and everything. And I have a tendency to go for the dramatic because I do biblical stuff and I do narrative family portraits. So for me, I tend to go for the dramatic. And I look at yours and I'm like, you're pulling drama out of the everyday, out of the simple. I find
Yeah.
that incredible. And I
Uh,
remember looking at my those bee boxes that look just like this in my front yard and going, I would have never even thought to paint that.
yeah.
And you made this incredible piece of art with that. Tell me a little bit about what you see in a scene, or how you choose your subject. What motivates you to paint a certain thing?
I think I'm compelled by certain things, and I do think, Jeff, that a lot of that is we use language to describe what it is, but for me, it is visual. It is a visual knowledge, of visual compulsion. Certain things just tell you something that you can read if you pay attention to them. And I knew that there was something about like the weight of the stone that was on top of the beehive and the ephemeral nature of the smoke. There's a little white butterfly on the other side of the painting, and this painting is like 58, I think, wide. Yeah, right there's the little
Yeah,
butterfly.
let's zoom in there.
And if you scroll up to the more images, you can, yeah, there's a right where the
Right
hand
where the
is, there's a
hand
little
is.
butterfly.
There it is. Yeah.
Yep. And I thought about like all of these little oppositions within the painting, the solidity of the blue cottage, and then the openness of the dry rack used to dry clothes. And I wanted the painting, I very often start the painting right at the audience's feet, right at my feet, and then draw them up and in. And so I really was thinking about these eternal balances of what is solid and what is ephemeral, what is weighted and what is light. And I think there's so much about a beehive because there is kind of this promise of sweetness that is unseen, but it is part of the mystery of the painting. And yeah, those are some of the things that I gravitate toward.
Hmm. So, you mentioned that you come in at the viewer's feet or at your feet, so at the front of the canvas toward the bottom of the
Yeah.
canvas. Do you think that has any is caused in any way at all by that experience you had in the Wisconsin Museum with that beautiful, huge painting where your eye level was right at the feet?
Yeah, it could very well be that that painting did in specific cause me to look straight up ahead and then to look up. You know, there was this
Yeah.
physical gesture that I had to make to take in the painting. But honestly, I think maybe there were a bunch of years ago I saw Antonio Lopez Garcia's Sink and Mirror, and in that painting he gives a kind of physical divide to divide the painting where we look down at the sink. Yeah, you can see it real clearly in this.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this
Mm-hmm.
divide, and we're looking down, and then he shifts our perspective up. And
Yeah.
I was so taken by that. And I really think that there's something about, I mean, I know our experience as men and women is definitely on a schema. I don't do a lot of vistas though. I think there's something there's an emotional difference between a vista and a painting that is anchored right at your feet. And this kind of looking down and then slightly up, looking down and slightly up. You know, a lot of people, women, when they have their children and their toddlers and they're young, we really do spend a lot of time looking down at our feet and slightly up. And I think that
Hmm.
that's a space that I love. And I really love like placing my audience pretty much where I'm standing because again, that kind of heightens this credibility of the verisimilitude of the painting for them. And also for myself, you know, in Lucy and Freud's large figurative paintings, there's almost this grotesque kind of subtle manipulation of what we think of as all the asymmetries of the body. But he is so darn close to those figures that's when those irregularities are most pronounced to us. And I like that pronouncement of those irregularities in nature. Whereas if you look at the vista, things become tonally uh, more harmonious, and there is more about passages than it is about incremental changes. And I right now am more aligned with the incremental changes, looking down and slightly up. That's what I want my audience to feel that too.
Hmm. That's awesome. All right, let me look at some more of your work here for the audience. And there was one that I know I saw on Instagram some time ago. All right, so okay, so this is one that's a good example of what you just said, where you're kind of entering at the bottom, looking down at your feet, and then it flattens out at the top, and it's like the picture plane is arced. And one
Yeah.
thing about that, it's kind of amazing to me, is that's really difficult to do. I've done things like that. You have to be a pretty dang good draftsman to pull that off. And then I scroll down here and look at where you're looking at it, and you're looking beyond 90 degrees at the subject. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of mind blown. Tell me a little bit about that. Why are you looking almost behind you here?
Yeah, I was set up, that field of flowers was along a highway. And so the highways where the camera angle was taken. And I didn't have a lot of choices because I knew I wanted the sunlight to be hitting those flowers consistently from the east, or
Right.
not east, the south. And so my canvas is full sun lit, which I know a lot of people shy away from, but I love painting that way. Um, and my shoulders to the painting, and my torso and my eyes are directly to my subject. So it's not that much of a difference than, parallel. Yeah, that was just the painting called for that, and that's what I did.
And that's just another one of those things that you were talking about with the complexities or the variation that you deal with when working on location. It's not just subjects moving, but it's your orientation to the subject, because you have to deal with all of those other,
Yeah.
yeah, all those other details.
Yeah,
Um,
this painting actually started just as the flowers, and then second day I went out and I brought the chair and the pot. And I didn't know exactly why I was bringing them, but I kind of just trusted it, and I plunked them down, and then I thought, yeah, they're going to be part of the painting. They're going to definitely be part of the painting.
to me, they're the subject of the painting. Man, I mean,
Yeah,
that was a great move.
yeah, the gloves came in last. I've been really painting quite a lot of gloves. Maybe since I think 1990s, I started painting some gloves, but they're coming back, and they definitely are like a surrogate for hands, our hands.
Yeah. The layers, you talked about layers and how you just kind of just keep on scumbling one layer on top of
Hmm.
another, wet on top of dry. It adds a
Hmm.
lot of character to the piece. Are you influenced at all by Russian painting?
I love Isaac Levitan's paintings, and I'm following a number of contemporary Russian painters, plein air painters
Mm-hmm.
on Instagram. So those folks, yes, I love their work.
Yeah, because you almost, I mean, I don't know. I don't, it's, I could have almost guessed you were Russian, and
Oh,
seeing your work.
it's the good Polish-Irish
Yeah,
combination.
maybe, maybe. Yeah. And that's
But
a compliment. I am a huge fan of Russian painting. I just love
yeah,
it.
I am too. I mean, it's very nice of you to say that. I don't think I'm at that point, but and honestly, Jeff, there are places in my painting where I do go back and look at the stage of the painting that was like an earlier veil of the
Mm-hmm.
painting, and I just wish I had left it. I
Really?
tend to love to stay in the painting just a little bit longer than what my aesthetic self likes in the outcome. So like the outcome, I'm driven to this level of outcome because I love being in the state of making a painting over a course of 3 weeks or so. And it's hard for me to let go of that. But the outcome that I would love aesthetically is one stage earlier than I stay. If that,
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And
do you know what I mean?
yeah, I think a lot of artists have this battle between temperament and
Yeah.
taste.
Hmm. I
And for
stay in.
me, it's why I don't like much of my work because my temperament is completely conflicts with my taste.
Yeah. And it's like it for me it's like I'm like the guest who just is enjoying the conversation so much that I don't want to leave and I overtalk. You know, I got to get, if I could just get out, extricate myself a little sooner and say there will be another chance, then I would personally even like the painting better. But at that point, I can't see that. I can't see that. So.
Do you have an example of a painting where you did stop earlier and you feel like that was the sweet spot?
Um, I have a lot of documents of paintings in that earlier stage, but not a lot that are that stage. Um,
Because there's
Maybe the
such a
little still life with
looseness. Oh, go ahead.
the little still life with the oval bowl. Yeah, one above. Yeah, that one.
Okay.
That might be one where
Oh, I see what you mean.
I wasn't trying to make a full-blown painting. The level of unresolved in this, I left it. If it were a really large field painting, I don't think I would, this was kind of a study painting. It was just a little painting, but um, that one has some of that unresolved in it that I thought added to the mystery of the work in a way. And
Mm-hmm.
I really prize mystery. You know, there's a writer Joyce Carey, who wrote an art book a long time ago, and he always talks about, or he talked about a dream which is truer than actual life. And only an art is there, it is there made purposeful and actual to our experience. And I really think that there's something about that dream nature, the mystery nature, that's really important in a work of art. Something that is resolved and unresolved, not the mystery to resolve, but the mystery to behold. It is an important feature.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your process a little more. I'd like to know
Okay,
kind of how you approach a painting from day one to the final day.
okay. Maybe one of those up at the top would be great to open.
Okay.
Yeah, like maybe one of the winter ones could be, yeah, like either of those. That
Yeah,
would be
let's
a
do
great
this one
one.
because we've already looked at the other one. Yeah, let's do this one.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So this painting started in a community garden, and then I quickly realized it was too cold. The temperature was like going to be really sub-zero. And so I went home, and my husband, he knew I was kind of upset because I already had the start of the painting down, and there was no warming house, no shelter there. And he had the idea, why don't we just go get those two Brussels sprout plants and put them in our own garden? So we went to the community garden, we dug them up, we put them in our garden. And then the painting, I was really lucky because I was right in and out the studio door.
Mm-hmm.
And I started it with, at this point, I really loved Williamsburg Italian pink paint. It was their color Italian pink. It was like gritty. It had a real grit quality to it, but it was a little orangier than what I currently like. So I don't use it anymore. But I started with that, just mapping, planning, looking, kind of seeking out where everything would be. Did a little bit of the underpainting. Then I went into this one with almost like a grisaille over the Italian pink. And that allowed me just to establish some of the value patterns. And then it was pretty much full out painting at that point, just finding the form and taking my time and enjoying those plants. And in this one, you can see at the top, there's a real subtle arc. It's just an
Mm-hmm.
arch, very abstract shape that has appeared numerous times in my landscape paintings, and it is totally a fabrication. It is a kind of I don't know, there's an emotional quality to that abstraction that is really important to me.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah, it took me a minute to see it, which is nice. It's
mhm,
subtle. You're
yeah,
talking about like the line in the snow.
yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it sort of formalizes that right at that point that the arch meets is a square
Mm-hmm.
below. And then the arc, in Renaissance times, they would have the where were was the earthly realm, all of the things that were material, physical, transient, and then the arch started to indicate this spiritual realm, this other, eternal kind of quality. And so in this painting, that second Brussels sprouts plant, the head of it moves up into that realm. And it is sort of like this everyday, extraordinary quality of just the beauty of life. And I really see it that way. So the composition there is square below and then arch. And,
Hmm.
you know,
It
I'm
almost
thinking
makes
about
him feel
that.
like
Yeah.
an icon, like these plants are an icon of sorts.
Yeah, they feel like they're moving and shifting and sort of going up that rectangle.
Do you have another example of where you use that arc in your? Oh, here it
The door,
is.
yeah, that one. Yep.
There it is.
There's another
Oh my
one.
gosh,
Yep.
look at that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever
And
would
then
have noticed it.
yeah, it's very subtle. I used to paint just a lot of circles and then a lot of ellipses when I was working abstractly, and I think they really do carry a lot of import. They're important to me. So
Yeah. Is there another example?
I think
You
in
don't have
the
it in all of
large
them.
wood pile,
In the wood
if you
pile.
go to the large wood pile painting, yeah, the puddle is not that it's not an invention, an abstraction, but it does credibly reflect for me that same idea
Yeah.
of the Renaissance kind of construct of this kind of um, I don't know, there's a quality in the puddle that felt um, like a rite of passage or a ritual or it felt sacramental, I'm going to say.
Right. Right.
Being in the woods at that time, it had just rained. That water that is in the puddle was recently in the air.
Yeah.
That to me is really powerful. And then it was super fragrant. And so this is a large painting as well. It's like I think 54 or 55 wide, and just carrying that down to that site every day for a bunch of
That's
days and
amazing. You are hardcore.
painting. Yeah,
And
I
are
don't
you
know.
usually by yourself or do you have some help?
Yeah, I'm usually for that painting. My husband Pat walked up and down every now and then. We have bears are in the woods up there, so every now and then they come visit me. But yeah, I love being by myself in those spaces, and I do lose track of time.
How do you deal with like onlookers? Do you get people that come and try and talk to you while you're out painting?
Yeah, I've done a couple of the plein air events, and I've just started to pull back on that. I did them for like a year and a half, and I actually really love that. But I realized that I'm not a competitive painter. It's not in my nature. And so, even though I made some money doing it, made a lot of connections with people, I love the people doing those plein air events. It's not my temperament. And um, but people would come up and talk, and I actually really enjoy that. I love demoing and I love painting with other people. I still teach a bunch of workshops, so yeah, it doesn't bother me. I feel like I can move from the clarity of my mind painting. It's a pretty direct route. Like I don't have to go very far to dip into it. And same for flow. Flow for me for painting is a pretty quick entry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about your business a little bit, because I see a lot of red dots here. So you've obviously had some
Yeah.
success.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. How do you market your work? How do you sell your work? Who represents you, if
Um,
anyone?
Yeah, for a lot of years I was represented by a couple of galleries, moved out east, started teaching at Skidmore College, and then had one baby, two baby, three baby. We moved back to Wisconsin, and in that time, I really kind of pulled away from galleries, and I did wasn't online, but I had some word of mouth, and people would come to the studio, and there were certain people who really supported the work, and that's really how I made work all through those years. There are a lot of paintings that I don't have documented, but I know they are out in the world and people are living with them. Just recently, like the last 8 years, I really rededicated myself to direct observation and painting a little bit more ambitiously in terms of scale. And I knew that one of my goals was to get back into some galleries. So I started my Instagram about 2 years ago, and that has actually been really great. For me, it's connected me to just so many artists that I love their work and I can see their work, but also a number of collectors have emerged from Instagram, both for small works, but also some of my very large plein air works
Wow.
have been sold through Instagram. And then sight unseen, I ship them to these people and they love them. So I'm very grateful.
Yeah, that's
But I knew,
great.
yeah, I knew for me, I really wanted to move back into a gallery. And I have one gallery in Door County, Wisconsin. It's Edgewood Orchard Galleries. And they've done very well for me. This is my first year with them. And then I just started representation at Torrey Folliard Gallery in Milwaukee. And she's an amazing gallerist. She's really a solid person with a good eye. She really looks out for her artists. And I know that from experience because right when I got out of graduate school, she was representing my work. And then through all that transition of, family life and trying to balance teaching and painting and kids, I kind of dipped away from her and she really welcomed me back and I'm really, really happy to be there with her. So looking forward to just building over this next year a really big body of work for a solo show with her. And the beautiful thing for me is my husband and I and one of our kids, we're going back to Scotland to live for a semester and I'm going to be painting there as well.
Now, why do you say semester? You're not in school anymore.
My husband is full professor. He's a
Oh,
poet
okay.
and he's still teaching. So
Oh,
yeah,
your
he is.
husband's a poet. That's fitting
Yes,
considering how you think. I love it.
yeah,
You guys are meant for each other.
yeah. It was just one of those things that really brought us together. We both loved poetry. And, when I say that poetry and philosophy are the uncorruptibles, truly they are. You do that for a sense of inner passion. And it has really given me the freedom to be a painter who does not have to have a consistent pressure to make the paintings to sell them. I'm making the paintings to make the paintings, and the selling of the paintings is part of that, certainly, but I'm with someone, my husband, who writes poetry not because he's ever going to make, you know, tons of money doing it. He's doing it because he has passion and conviction for that work. And it's beautiful. He has 5 books of poetry. And so we have a lot of conversations about what it means to live a beautiful life, a meaningful life, an intentional life. And we've been able to provide for our family and enjoy teaching. And obviously, I enjoy painting. So that's part of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So are you going to really try and make a series? You said Scotland, right?
Oh, right. Yes.
So are
I
you going to
am
make a
going
series of
to,
that area?
what I'm going to do for Tori is we decided I'm going to build the body of work for her before I leave. So it's going to be all framed, all
Okay.
set up. Everything's going to be ready. And then I'm going to go to Scotland for a semester. When I come back from Scotland, the solo show will open at Tori's. And then, I'm going to have a body of work from Scotland. And when I'm there, Jeff, I'm so excited because even though I don't show my portrait work very much, the people in Scotland, they will sit for you.
They
You're in a
do.
pub and they will sit for you. And so
Really?
I'm going to do some portraits and then I'm going to do some landscape work.
Oh man, I can't wait to see that body of work. That's going to be
I'm
awesome.
so excited.
So how do you know that? Because you've been to Scotland before then?
Yeah, we've lived there twice in the past, and I'll tell you, I've painted at the National Galleries in Scotland doing master copies. One of them was a master copy of the Rembrandt, and another was of Velasquez, the old woman cooking eggs.
Mm-hmm.
I did a portrait of the boy's head and then a Rubens painting, and then I got to do a copy work at the Louvre, and yeah, I've really benefited from that.
That's
And then painting
amazing.
in the landscape in Scotland, it's like, oh, mind-blowingly challenging. You really have to like submit to the elements to make the painting.
Just because it's overcast all the time and sunny, then cloudy,
Oh,
then sunny,
it's
then cloudy.
so changeable.
Yeah.
It'll be sunny 5 minutes, then it will snow, then it will be overcast, then it will rain, then the
Oh, that
sun will
sounds
come back out.
brutal.
It's just crazy cool.
But you're going to
Yeah.
do it anyway. You're going to be outside the
Oh
whole
yeah,
time.
I've done it in the past. I love it.
Oh
It's
my
my thing.
gosh, you're amazing. So your
Yeah.
husband seems really supportive too. I mean, he's
Yes.
lugging canvases places for
Hmm.
you, planting plants from the city garden in your garden.
Yep.
And how has that been over the years?
Fabulous. I met the right person. He's a lovely man. Um, he's intellectual. He's clearly poetic. Um, I think that what we decided very early in our marriage was, and maybe even before we were married, is that anything that progresses my work also progresses his work. Anything that progresses his work also progresses my work. It's not that I'm a painter and he's a poet. It's that we have a kind of an exchange between us that is mutually supportive. And if we're both expanding like that, get claiming each other's solitude for sure. There's a lot of solitude for us. We protect that. I mean, Rainer Maria Rilke, he talks about protecting one another's solitude, and we bought into that early.
Yeah. That's such a cool thing because you're both creatives, but you have
Yeah.
nothing to be competitive over.
No, we don't. And our kids have gone into such unique fields. Like our oldest son, Walter, he's an architect just out of school. Our middle daughter, Mary Ellen, is primarily she's studying engineering and she loves it. She loves math. But she also is a phenomenal writer. And then our youngest daughter, Martha, loves all the cognitive sciences and everything on neuroplasticity and brain research. She's totally in. She also loves botany and she knows all the toxic plants of the world and how much toxicity you need. So she's kind of crazy. Cool
Wow.
kid.
Yeah, that is a
Yeah,
diverse family. Wow.
yeah,
Well, so tell me if you could give advice to a young artist that wanted to
yeah.
be a painter like yourself, what would that be?
I would say, first and foremost, know your nature. Find your nature, whatever that is, your temperament, your character, um, your your values. Know that, and out of that, build skill, but don't lose sight of that individual nature, because that's going to be what propels you forward and it's going to be your touchstone. So, knowing your nature. And how do you find your nature? Well, you push up against a lot of different things. You take, um, you know, risks that are calculated risks, but be very, very open, but always ask, is this something that is of my nature? Or is it something new to my nature that I want to fold into my nature or my character? And out of that, just be ready to follow it. Grab the reins. Those horses are going to take you somewhere, and follow and be patient. But a lot of the people in my workshops are retired from a profession that they loved and was very meaningful to them, but now they want to paint. And for those people, I don't tell them to follow your nature. What I tell them is follow the process that makes sense to you. The, I think the process has to be a driving factor because they might not have all that it takes to follow the arc of a skill set in the same way they have other life experience that will insert itself for that skill set. So yes, they need to build skill, but if they follow a process and find a materiality of, something to work with that they love, that is meaningful to them, I think everything else, the confidence of what they're doing will come out of that. Certainly the skill set, but follow a process. So
Hmm.
important.
That's great advice. Well, Bethann, it's been awesome talking to you. It's been a huge inspiration. Thank you so much.
I love talking to you, and thank you so much. I would love to talk to you more about your paintings at some point. So
We'll do
if we
that.
could sometime connect, it would be just a pleasure.
We'll do
So
that.
thank you for the podcast and your work, Jeff. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks for tuning in to the Undraped Artist Podcast. If you enjoyed it, subscribe. And if you could, leave a comment or review. That really helps the channel. Please share the show with your friends, and if you're feeling generous, consider a monthly donation at theundrapedartist.com. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next week.